Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Lifelong Learning. It's a pleasure to have you back. Greetings from the University of Findlay here in Findlay, Ohio. My name is Julie Klingler. I am the director of the Wolf Center for Alumni, Parents, and Friends. And today we welcome back our Lifelong Learning Connections community. So it's wonderful and very exciting to see all of you here today. Whether you're a loyal UF supporter or you're new to us, we are so glad that you're here again with us for the month of April. We've got a great lineup of lifelong learning sessions during this month, ranging in topics from medical to financial, animal research, and community updates. So we're really looking forward to this month. Don't forget, coming up today at 12:30, we will kick off the 160th anniversary of the Civil War. We're going to talk to local history experts, Ron Ammons, Rob Tong, and hear from UF's Dr. Nicole Schroeder about the relationship between wars and pandemics. And as a reminder on that, that's a separate link. So you'll want to make sure that you connect using the right link and come back and join us at 12:30. We've got a great session planned for today. First, I want to just make a couple of quick announcements. We want to make sure that you're using the speaker view for the best and largest picture of those who are speaking. To do that, you can go up to the upper right-hand corner of your screen and click on the view button and enable speaker view. We've got chat enabled down there too, so put your comments in the chat, interact with your friends, say hello to everyone, and also identify yourself with a good name, a first name and a last name, because we will need those for Q&A time and prize giveaways and chat. Speaking of prize giveaways, at the very end, we will have a spin the wheel time where we will spin for a winner and give away a prize. So make sure that you stay with us until the end. You have to be present to win. And so that's going to be really exciting today. We're looking forward to that. First up, I'd like to introduce to you one of UF students, Jenna Bierup. Before we get started with Dr. Bret Bahn today, I asked Jenna to pop in and share her story because she is an example of a current UF biology student that has a similar story, and she's really on track to follow in similar footsteps of today's keynote speaker, Bret Bahn. So Jenna is, to tell you a little bit about her, she is a University of Findlay senior. She is a biology major with a minor in chemistry and psychology. Her hometown is Burton, Michigan, and last year she received the McGranahan Scholarship Endowment Fund and also the Office of Development Educational Assistance Scholarship. So Jenna, we welcome you, and please at this time, share your story with us briefly. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Julie. So thank you so much for that introduction. As Julie said, my name is Jenna. I am a senior biology major here at the university. But I guess I haven't always had like the most straightforward path, and UF kind of really helped define that for me. So when I first came here, I'm sure like everyone else probably here, I wanted to be a veterinarian. So I did the whole animal science program, double majored in biology, and I was just so gung-ho. And then doing all of these courses that are so hands-on and the faculty are so involved really told me that I love the medicine, but I really, really wanted the people and not the animals. And so I transferred into the biology department, focusing that as my primary major, which has been truly a wonderful decision. I absolutely adore every single one of my professors. I, in fact, have never had a bad professor. My classes are super interesting, and the professors, not only do they make that interesting, but they go out of their way to assist students. Like, I've never once had a question that was not answered, or if they didn't have an immediate like response, they always would go out of their way to make sure I had whatever resource I would need to find that answer. And so the biology department is a close connected community, I guess would be a best way to say that, is they're always looking out for the student good. And you guys are no different. They would always help you, even if you're not a bio major. They would 100% be on board to help you with anything you have. And so, as Julie mentioned, I'm on a very similar career path to what Mr. Baum followed earlier on. And I am looking to go into medical school. That is the future goal. And so I'm like pursuing a lot of psychology courses and biology, and I'm doing tons of volunteering and just everything and anything I can to make sure that not only am I a well-rounded individual, but I'm already preparing myself for a life of giving back to others. And working in a community and providing to those who do not have all of the resources that I have been given. And whether that be through when I was back home and people just telling me different advice about how to pursue my goals or giving me scholarships. And as Julie mentioned, I received a number of endowed scholarships through the University of Findlay, in addition to the McGranahan Scholarship. And those scholarships play a huge role in my life here. Like I would not be at UF without all of these scholarships and without all of the assistance of donors. And I'm not just talking scholarships for donors, I'm talking about how they have updated our facilities or built buildings or done additions on rooms. And like they've done a whole bunch of stuff on campus that helps promote students and their learning and giving us the opportunity to do more research and just explore our own education further. So thank you all for having me here. I really have enjoyed being at Findlay. My biology degree hopefully is going to take me to the future and work in the medical field and assist others who don't have the resources. But really UF has been the reason I'm capable of doing that. And it's up to all of you students, my professors, and the donors who have assisted. So thank you so much.
Jenna, thank you for popping in and talking to us today. Jenna, for those who haven't met Jenna yet, she is dynamic and wonderful. She's a hard worker. She is willing to jump in and do anything at any time. So appreciate you being here today and sharing your story so that we can get a glimpse of how, the roots of what Dr. Bahn did when he was here and what's happening in those colleges and in that field currently. So thanks for connecting those dots for us. And without further ado, I'd like to move on to Dr. Bahn today. Dr. Bret Bahn received his degree in biology right here at the University of Findlay in 1999, and then he earned his medical degree at the University of Toledo. He served in the United States Navy as a U.S. Naval flight surgeon and deployed twice with the Marine Corps in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. Following his U.S. Navy service, he completed his anesthesia residency at the University of Michigan. In addition, Dr. Bahn also completed his interventional pain fellowship at Johns Hopkins University. Currently, he's a physician specializing in interventional procedures at Northwest Ohio Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. And he also volunteers for the Flag City Honor Flight Program, which he's going to tell us a little bit about today as well. So without further ado, like I said, I'd like to now turn it over to Dr. Bret Bahn.
All right. Thank you so much, Julie, for that nice introduction. And Jenna, it's good to hear from a current student who's going a kind of similar pathway. I see a lot of similarities. I mean, I was a biology major myself with a chemistry minor. And again, keep pushing towards that goal of medical school. And definitely University of Findlay will help you prepare for that. And I think that they've done a great job. I'm going to go ahead and do primarily a kind of a slideshow to kind of talk about what the whole plan schedule today was, a journey from essentially the honor flight here in Hancock County. So in order to do that best, I think it's kind of give a little bit of background. And I think slides will bring us some of the pictures too along the way. So I think it's helpful. So I'm going to try to get this going here now. Let's see. All right. Julie, are you able to see that?
Not yet.
Not yet. All right, let me make sure. The share screen button's there. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, that's not a problem. I can make this work for you. So try this and see, click OK, and then try that and try it again and see if it works for you. Okay.
All right, let's see now. Now you got everything there, looks like?
Yeah, looks good. Yes.
All right, everyone. So we'll go ahead and move on here. So this is part of Lifelong Learning Connections. Again, my name, Bret Bahn. I am a University of Findlay graduate, as Julie had said, in 1999. It was December. I actually graduated a little bit early so I could prepare for med school. I am a former U.S. Navy flight surgeon, and I was stationed down in Jacksonville, which we'll cover this a bit more, but the helicopter squadron was with HMH 461. My background, I am a local Hancock County native. I was born at Blanchard Valley Hospital. and I did graduate from Riverdale High School. I attended the University of Findlay from the years of 96 until December of 99. My major was almost identical to Jenna's, again, biology with life sciences and a chemistry minor. She's got some more psychology in there for sure than what I did. But that being said, I was also a member of the 1997 University of Findlay National Championship football team. It's a great pleasure to be part of that team and work and play under Coach Strom, who was there at the time. On the bottom right-hand corner here, that is the national championship ring that we all received after that game. The 4 diamonds here represent the 4 national championships that Coach Strom brought to the University of Findlay. At the end of my time, I did graduate summa cum laude, and I just threw a little bit here at the bottom here. I do still hold a couple records for the kicking game. Most extra points ever attempted in a game in 1997, as well as in a season. Again, we had a really good year. Of course, that year went undefeated. So, here is Coach Strom, and this is actually me with Coach Strom and my oldest son, Gannon. He was a senior this year at Van Buren. He's going to be graduating, deciding college. But this was a year ago, his junior year. I asked Coach Strom to come out and talk to the players, and he's always willing to teach and try to help with the kids. So he came out, didn't even think twice about it. Came out and spoke with all the players before a game, and it did result in a victory for our team. So we were pretty happy about that. This is my family, just a little bit about us. I'm going to have some other pictures of the family throughout. Family is really big to me and important, including the university community, which is I consider part of my family, of course, too. My wife's in the center there. She's kind of the rock of the whole family. Couldn't do anything without her. My oldest son there, Gannon, on the top. My daughter is Elena, we call her Laney, and then Tanner and Cooper are the 2 younger boys. So medical school for me started in 2000, went to 2004. It was Medical College of Ohio at the time. It's now the University of Toledo Medical Center. The preparation really started at the University of Findlay. Again, I went in similar to Jenna. I had initially thought years ago about veterinary school and kind of switched even before I started and knew that I wanted to do medicine. I agree with her. I think the biology program is great, and I see how much it's grown in the past few years, just from the advancements with the physician assistant program, which was not even there when I was there, and even the physical therapy program. So the biology department, science department has been great again for the university, and I think it continues to grow and provide benefit to the students. But it definitely prepared me for my education. I had some great professors like Dr. Linda Peck and others who were just fantastic. When I was in medical school, I at that time made a decision that with costs and everything else, and plus I had a history with the Navy, with my grandfather being in the Navy, that I was interested in trying to serve if I could. So I reached out to the Navy, and I was selected as a recipient of the Health Professions Scholarship Program. With this program, they essentially will help with your cost of medical school in return for service paid back to the Navy. So I did take my oath of office between my first and second year of medical school. I was in Bethesda at the time. Actually, Medical College of Ohio had allowed me to do an internship at the National Institutes of Health, which is a pretty neat opportunity. And with Bethesda being right across the street, it was an easy way for me to go over and take my oath of office. And then when I completed my medical training in June of 2004, I started right up with my surgical internship in the Navy. My wife and I moved at that time. We had just our one child, and we moved to Naval Hospital, Portsmouth, Virginia, where I had started my training, planning on doing orthopedic surgery, which kind of changed along the way. In the Navy, whenever you do this kind of program, you actually enter in at an O3, which is a lieutenant in the Navy. There's my oldest son again. It's one of his senior pictures. Gannon, he's yet undecided on college. It narrowed it down to about 3 different universities, so we're still doing some college visits. But as far as flight surgery training, that occurs after you've done your internship. So the Navy's idea is if you've done an internship, you've now at least received enough medical training to take care of their troops. And there are specialties that you can do, and flight surgery is one of them. So I was selected to be part of the flight surgery class in 2005. And they station you down in Pensacola, Florida for this training. It's very strenuous to say the least. The training, the physical part is very intense, from the water survival training we have to do. And the academic classwork is really no joke either. You do all the same classwork that every pilot that goes through the military does. So that includes things like navigation, weather classes, and overall, it kind of all comes to at the very end, you get to learn how to fly a fixed wing aircraft as well as a helicopter. Now, we don't solo pilot as a flight surgeon. We do everything with dual piloting. So there is another individual with you at all times, but you are flying the aircraft. The hardest thing for me probably was this part here that I put about the swimming. I'm not a very strong swimmer, so to swim a mile in flight gear and tread water with full flight gear and some of these other things, learning to parachute and that, it was definitely intense, but again, really great for me. Pensacola, as many of you may know, if not, it is a home to the Blue Angels up here in the top right. We live just outside the back gate, and the Blue Angels flew over our house 2 to 3 times a week. So it's kind of nice to have your own show in your private backyard. As a flight surgeon, when you complete your training, they assign you to a unit. You kind of select what you want, and then I was eventually assigned to HMH 461, which is located in Jacksonville, North Carolina. And it is a CH-53 helicopter squadron, and the patch up in the top right was the patch that we had at the time. They're called Iron Horse, and my duty as a flight surgeon, essentially you're the primary care physician for that unit. They have a lot of air crew, they have pilots, and you serve to help provide immunizations for them, cover a sick call for the entire base, and then maintain all their health care if you would deploy with them, which I did deploy on 2 separate occasions with them. Another little breakup with some picture here. This is my daughter, Laney. She is now a sophomore, going to be a junior next year. This is from my son's junior year. She was a freshman at the time. She was able to cheer for him, and she cheered this entire year for him too as a senior. So kind of fun getting to watch them together. So the CH-53 helicopter, again, some of this is just background, but for me, I think it kind of tells what I did, where I came through and what I did, some of the experiences I had in the Navy. So it's a large, heavy lift helicopter. It can lift 36,000 pounds. We like to say we can lift somebody's house if we want to, and put them on these external sling loads. If you've ever seen a helicopter carrying around a Humvee, that's probably a 53 that's doing it. The top speed is 196 miles per hour. You can actually air over fuel too with the C-130 aircraft, and it does have 3 separate engines. This is a picture that I took when we were over in Africa, out the window of the one aircraft of another aircraft. So the 3 engines, you have one here, a second one here, and a third one's on the other side. Typically, we fly around with the tail open here because when you're overseas in Africa and other areas, we were always prepped for any kind of assault that we could have come upon us. So there is a tail gunner back here, and there's 2 gunners in the windows too. This is flying over the Gulf of Tajora there near the Horn of Africa, which I have some maps to help kind of orient you to where that's at. Actually, real quick, I'm going to end this just for a moment, Julie, because my wife texted me today, one of the pilots that I was with. He had actually sent us a video. Can you still see me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay. If I want to share that, how do I do that? Then I got to stop sharing this. Is that correct? Or do I just go to the other video?
You might be able to just go to the other video on your
Can
screen.
you see that okay right there?
No, I still
No?
show your PowerPoint. Yeah.
I still show the PowerPoint?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hold on. And sorry, well, it was going to be a good plan, but see if it works here. Let's see, stop a share there. Okay.
Okay. Good.
And then we're going to share again, but we're going to go to this one here.
Okay.
There it is. Okay. All right. Sorry, everyone, for that. Just wanted to. So one of the pilots I was deployed with, he actually sent this to my wife today. Just it kind of goes through some of the helos themselves. I've got a couple of spots here I'm going to show you. This is several of them flying in together, landing here. The dust is unbelievable. Sometimes these aircraft can kick off. And then there's the tail gunner. You can see him coming off next to the gun there. We're going to move on to a little bit further along here in the video. So these aircraft, I talked about how they can hold things. So again, it's always dangerous. And this is why they have a flight surgeon with them at all times. So you can see these guys are underneath this helicopter, and they're going to hoist these Humvees and take off with them. Again, moving on in the frames a little bit further, this one's kind of special because it does show here they are holding those Humvees, and they're actually going to air over fuel at the same time with the C-130 while they're hauling the Humvees. So again, this is just some of the training that we would do on a routine basis. So again, I think it helps just kind of show what these guys do and what as a flight surgeon, why it's so important that you're there. So, all right, sorry about that. We're going to go back to the PowerPoint then. All right, are we back up then?
Looks good.
That's good. All right.
Yes.
Let me go resume, maybe. Oh, darn it. All right, we'll get back to that one, sorry. All right, so in the deployment preparation, as a flight surgeon, you have a lot of duties. Essentially, you got to get all the immunizations done. So you're talking 200 to 300 plus immunizations just for your squadron. All the medical checks, make sure they're good to go from a physical standpoint, and then the paperwork, of course, paperwork. Education is a big part. That's really what the CO wants you to do. So when he's in charge of the squadron, he wants to make sure all of his crew knows what the dangers are. We were going to Africa, so they had to know about the heat, the snakes, the spiders, and then disease like malaria. We all had to have malaria prophylaxis medication the entire time we were there because malaria is endemic to that area. This is that C-130 they were refueling with. You can see the baskets they put out here, and that's where essentially you want to refuel with and hook to. My first deployment was a 9-month deployment. It went from September of 06 to May of 07. We were in Djibouti, Africa, which is in the Horn of Africa. And our goal there was to basically perform training missions, but then rescue missions when needed. And we were always in support of any missions that we were called for to help with the special forces and such. We did forward deploy during this deployment down to Kenya, which was definitely an experience. Kenya is much different than Djibouti. It's very nice in terms of its location, but it's very hot, humid, and the animals are just unbelievable that you see. And we were there for 6 weeks in that Kenyan region. Here's another kind of picture I took. This is me in the aircraft shooting across it, the other who's coming in to refuel. This is continent of Africa, of course. And Djibouti is this tiny little country right here in the red square. Blowing up over here, it's the blue country. It's neighbors that are nearby. You have Ethiopia, which we're a pretty good ally with. And then you have some countries that we have kind of a storied past with, including Eritrea and Somalia. Across the water here, we do have Yemen right over here, which makes, again, a nice location for us to have a military base there, just in case anything's needed. It really has changed our mission there, though, as a military for sure. Djibouti itself, a little bit about it. Max temperatures can get quite hot, 122 degrees in the summertime. Their temps even in the winter are 90 degrees. They do have 25 different species of snakes, so you better like snakes if you're going to go there. They do have the black mamba there, which is one of the most deadly snakes there is. The top right is a black mamba. They would find them on occasion on the base. During my time, there was never any, but the deployment before us, they did have 2 different times. They located them in the tents where people were staying. And then camel spiders were also around, which that's kind of a large version of one down there. We didn't have them quite that big, but they were still pretty scary for a lot of guys. Some other critters that we would see around base. This is a mongoose up in the top left here. I followed one of those back to my tent one night. I stayed pretty far away from him, but he was roaming. They do feed on a lot of snakes, so that's why they hang around the base. And then over here on the top right is a hyena. Didn't see them very frequently, but at least on one occasion when I was on the running trails, we did see one of the hyenas. Thankfully, some runners were coming from another direction. There was several of them, and he got spooked and ran away. The mission there, again, like I said, we would support the special forces and others while trying to continue to fight the war on terror. Although it's really switched. In fact, in the past 5 to 10 years, they've gone more to humanitarian base, and that's our major goal. Even when we were there, we were doing humanitarian missions, building essentially meat processing plants, helping build schools and others. And then this life-saving missions that did occur on a few different occasions. We were called for. Little intro up there for my son. Again, this is Tanner. He's number 3, as we call our children by numbers usually, because it's easier for people to remember which one we're talking about. Tanner is a goalkeeper for a soccer team, and he's actually going to be a freshman next year. So we're going to have another one in high school. As one leaves, we have another one going in. So here's the final completion of that picture that I was kind of showing along the way. Again, he did have success. He was able to get in the basket. This is a fairly dangerous thing to do. Again, part of the reason why you always have to be aware when you're flying an aircraft. Obviously, anytime you fly, it's dangerous. But when you have 3 aircraft this close to one another, they're all flying at different speeds, and you're trying to hit a basket that is not very large at all with this probe on a helicopter. You can imagine risks and the dangers are there. While I was there, we did do some other, this is one of the times where I was actually not in Djibouti. I was down in Ethiopia in this picture. They had me help with all the immunizations for the local surrounding area. So the Army National Guard was there, and they were located down in Ethiopia, helping train some of the Ethiopian soldiers. Well, as a result of it, they needed their standard flu vaccine. I know everybody's getting COVID vaccines now, but this was just a standard flu vaccine at the time, but they have to have a medical professional physician there. So I traveled down with them, was there for about 4 days. They took me to this local small little village nearby, and those individuals there, and you can see the hut behind them there, that is what they live in. So it's not hard to appreciate what you have here in the United States when you see how others live in other countries. We would bring them water, shoes, clothing. If whatever donations came overseas to us, we would typically take to them. Just as an example, for them to get drinking water that we take for granted, I have a bottle of water sitting right next to me here. They have to walk about a mile one way, get it out of what they call the chocolate river, because the color is about that color, and then walk back a mile and then boil it to make it safe to use for cooking and drinking. So again, really, really impressive how these people continue on, and to them, it's just their normal day. I was talking about the life-saving stuff that we had to do on occasion. This is probably the most exciting part, but at the same time, also, very, again, as a physician, you're young. I was young at the time. I'd done an internship and flight training, but you're never quite prepared for getting a call that there's been a Humvee that's gone off the side of a cliff. We knew there was 4 victims in the vehicle at the time, but we didn't know what the status was. So we had to fly down to Ethiopia. It was about midnight when we were flying in to this landing zone. We were greeted by all the locals who had machine guns pulled because they weren't sure why we were landing in their back of their field in the middle of the night. And we communicated enough to let them know we were just there to get our guys. There were 2 Army National Guard, unfortunately, individuals who were pronounced dead at the scene. They did not survive. And then we did have 1 Ethiopian local who was saved, as well as 1 other Army National Guard who survived the crash. The Ethiopian local, we had to intubate him at the scene, which means put a breathing tube in him and then transport him back to our medical facility until he could get transported out to the local Djibouti hospital. So we, again, everybody on that flight received a Sikorsky life-saving award. The helicopter we were part of is a Sikorsky helicopter, so they give these kind of awards out if it's used, any other helicopters used in a life-saving mission, such as this one. We returned home, and it wasn't too long I was going back. About January of 2008, I was heading back for another deployment with my squadron. In between, we had our number 3 child, Tanner, that you saw earlier. And we actually would have been there the whole time. I would have been there the whole time had it not been for that. My time with the Navy was actually finishing up. So the Navy, once you repay your time, they will let you leave in the middle of a deployment. So they did send another flight surgeon to replace me. So I was only there 4 months the second time. And it was during this deployment, though, that I kind of made the switch from orthopedics to anesthesia, which is where ultimately I ended up. There was multiple healthcare providers there. I spoke with all of them, and it just kind of became apparent to me that I think anesthesia was something I wanted to do. I started applying for outside the match residency spots, which means I wasn't going the traditional route. And here's Cooper, our youngest one. You can see the M back here. Yes, this is at the big house there in Michigan. He was at this game with his mom, and it was the Notre Dame game a few years ago when it was pouring down rain and they were soaked to the bone, but he was still having a good time. But yes, we did end up going to the University of Michigan. After that, training in the Navy, I think all this goes back to the education I received early on at University of Finley. I can't speak enough about the training I had there. Anesthesia at University of Michigan has always been a top 5 program every year, and I don't see that changing. They're just a great institution. You get exposure to some of the most difficult cases you can imagine from the anesthesia side. Also, at this time, I got to work with several different pain management physicians up in that area that were training basically residents like myself. And I decided at that time that I wanted to do pain management. So I started to look to see what opportunities there were. I could have stayed on at University of Michigan, but ultimately I was able to get my interventional pain fellowship, as Juliet said earlier, at Johns Hopkins, which was just, for me, a no-brainer. I mean, you get a chance to train at one of the best hospitals in the country year after year, you take it. So again, I kind of still surreal for me to think, I born in Findlay, went to Findlay, University of Findlay, and then here I've trained at some of the best training programs there are. And again, there was 5 attendings at this pain fellowship. It's interesting because you get to kind of see everybody's style is a little bit different. And I like to think that my style today as a physician is kind of molded basically off of all of these different providers. So you take a little bit from each one and you learn how to care for patients and just bringing the best care you can possible to the patients. Private practice after training, I did go to 1 year in Redding, California. We really thought that this was going to be the place for us. My family and I liked the group, really liked the anesthesia group I was with. but I put in the middle there, family is the reason, and then NWO right next to it. I've known Dr. Bruce Heck for a long time. Even when I was at University of Findlay, he's helped me out along the way. He wrote letters for medical school to help me get in, and we've been close ever since. And he had talked to me at that point in time about returning to Findlay to provide pain management care. I wasn't really certain we'd be able to do it because I didn't know much about running a practice and helping out, but he was willing to help. And we had actually, the reason I came back at that time to speak with him was because my grandmother passed away. So unfortunately, again, bad situation, but it turned out to be a great opportunity whenever we spoke. And we decided to move the family back to this area where both of our parents are at, and the kids could be near their family and grandparents. Here's my wife and I. This is our 20th anniversary trip that we took a few years ago, pre-COVID, of course. But this is a Mediterranean cruise. So we were somewhere at some castle in France, I think, when we took this picture. So again, really neat trip. And we literally did it the year before COVID. So we're really happy we were able to get that in because we definitely wouldn't be able to do a trip like this now. And we're going to move on because, again, this whole thing is about the journey from my time as a flight surgeon to now honor flight. Why we've been back for Findlay practicing for almost 5 years. Whenever actually Kelly Van Atta, she's a nurse who reached out to me and said, hey, look, we love to have help from a medical profession standpoint as guardian. And also not just that, she said, you're a veteran. It means a lot to these veterans that when they have other veterans who are with them. And I couldn't agree more. I had heard about the honor flight, but I didn't really know much about it, but it was a great experience. I was one of actually 2 medical professionals, Dr. Eric Browning, who's a general surgeon there in Findlay. He was also a guardian on this trip. We were kind of the makeshift medical providers, if you will, because we both were physicians and surgeons, but at the same time, we were essentially assigned one of the individuals that we were the guardian for. And we'll go through a little bit about the honor flight now, for those of you who aren't familiar with it. The Hancock County honor flight, I mean, the top part is kind of their statement, okay? They believe that all veterans should have this opportunity to visit memorials in Washington, D.C. that honor their military service and sacrifices. They made those for America's freedom, so they try to make these visits possible. It is a great organization. It's 100% volunteer run, and it's a nonprofit that was started in 2010. Flags in Honor Flight is really kind of the hub of a national honor flights network. And it's not just the Hancock County and Findlay area. I have it in a slide a little bit later on, but they even extend up into the Michigan area. We help veterans across this whole region. The community members are so important. So if you've never done this and are interested in helping out and what you can do, right now things are on pause. I did check their website. They haven't been able to do an honor flight the past 2 times because of COVID, but they are planning one in September, it looks like. So again, I think it's a great opportunity to be able to give back to the veterans, but you have to have basically a guardian to accompany them. So that is very important. That ensures it's a safe, enjoyable time for everyone, including the veterans, and you'll get a lot out of it yourself too. Usually they try to take about 80 veterans, and it's no cost to the veterans. As a guardian, there is a small cost just to essentially cover the travel expense for yourself, but it's so rewarding what you get back in return. And again, the reason America felt it's important to build these memorials to them for their sacrifice these veterans made, and essentially the honor flight network believes it's important that they actually get to see their memorials. Some of these individuals would never have the financial means or certainly physical ability to go themselves, and that's the importance of why the guardians are there to help these guys get around, whether it's pushing a wheelchair so they can get to see their monument, memorial, or whatever. The honor flight itself tries to make it, again, for Hancock County, but like I said, Northwest and Southeast Michigan. We had several Michigan individuals on our trip because there weren't as many in Hancock County and surrounding regions in Northwest Ohio. It's a busy day. Day of the flight, just as an example, you arrive at like 5:30 a.m. Some of the convoy starts. Buses leave at 6:30. We left the year I went out of the Cube. Y'all meet down at the Cube if you're familiar with that, in the north side of Findlay. And you get a police escort the whole way up to Toledo Airport. It's kind of, something that Sheriff Heldman and the Hancock County Sheriff's Department does, which is great. Every guardian that's on this, and so if you guys would decide to do something like this in the future ever, you do have to complete training. It's usually a day of training where you learn what your duties are going to be on for that day. And then you get breakfast before you leave. It's usually donated by somebody up there. This is right before we left. Myself, kind of an interesting honor flight for me and the others here, because this is Larry Monday. He's a local individual. He's been on multiple honor flights. They kind of partnered him up with me because it's my first, but yeah, we had 2 individuals. So The individual, Larry has his hand around here in the wheelchair on the left, that's the father, and this is his son. So the father was a World War II veteran, and his son, who's a Vietnam veteran, wanted to be his guardian and wanted to take him on a trip. But because of some other health issues and concerns they had for the son, they told him he wasn't fit to be the guardian, but they are taking Vietnam veterans. So they offered for him to come with his dad so they could do the trip together. So we have a World War II vet and a Vietnam vet, and the four of us stayed together. We were nearly inseparable the whole day, and it was a great experience. This is as we're getting ready to depart. They have a ramp set up so you can get them up easily into the aircraft. A lot of volunteers come out. This is early in the morning again. Remember, these guys come in with their Harleys and all their things from VFW and everything else with the flags. It's a really nice send off for these veterans. After you do land, we actually flew into Baltimore, and they've been doing that more and more. They have arranged now for a police escort down to Washington, D.C. If any of you have ever traveled to the D.C. area, a police escort makes it a lot easier to get through traffic. Okay, let me just tell you. It was very nice to be able to, and it was something special for these guys. So it got us right down to the National Mall very quickly. And we started off there trying to get to the main memorials that these veterans are associated with. And most of the time right now, they're still trying World War II, Korean veterans, as well as Vietnam. So those are the ones that we started with. Afterwards, they usually get lunch on the National Mall there. They have some other volunteers who stop by, and then actually some of our congressmen stopped by and visited, so it was nice. And then we got on a bus trip and went to each of the individual branches memorials. So Iwo Jima for the Marine Corps, we went to the Air Force Memorial, right across from the Pentagon. This was at the World War II Memorial. Again, this father-son, they were actually from Michigan. So we found the Michigan one and took a picture of them together and made sure they had that for their family. And again, my veteran, he was a Vietnam veteran, so we did obviously go over to Vietnam Memorial. He did find some of the names of some of the guys that he knew, which is a quite sobering experience. Finally, you finish the trip right before you head back at Arlington National Cemetery. That trip is planned. You get private seating for the veterans. They watch the changing of the guard. And during this changing of the guard, the soldiers, of course, it's an amazing thing to see how they trade off when they do the changing of the guard. But you have this whole group of veterans, which I'm going to skip real quick to the next slide. This is where we were sitting. So these veterans, as they do this, they know that, you know, the guard knows the veterans are all sitting around the area. So as they're walking along, they will scuff like the heel of their shoe on the ground, which is their way of basically showing respect to the veterans, because they can't salute them or talk to them at all because of their requirements of staying in line the whole time. So it's kind of a neat experience, and every single one of these guys loved it when they heard that stuff. Finally, you fly back to Toledo from the Baltimore area, and they have a welcome party set up. This is late at night now. We started at 5:30, 6:30 in the morning. You're getting back about 11:30 at night. Some of these guys still had to travel back to Michigan, so they didn't get home till 1 or 2 in the morning. But they try to set up as many people as they can to this welcome party, because the Vietnam veterans, for example, they obviously did not come home to any fanfare. So this is kind of one of the first time they've had a welcome home party. So it's great for them to see. This is at the welcome back party. Again, my gentleman's here, his father's here. You can see the flags. I mean, he's still, this is 11:30 midnight, and he's still smiling. I mean, all year to year, he's had just such a great time. Again, and then they bring in other, you know, this way they brought in one of the service dogs for the veterans to see and everything else. So that's kind of the honor flight component. Again, I would say before we go too far along with what I'm currently doing, if any of you are interested, again, certainly it is something that I think is a great experience. It really has changed me. I was going to do it again this year, and then COVID hit. So as soon as we're able to again, which it sounds like maybe September, I'm going to try to do another one if my schedule allows. Just is really something you can do for the veterans. And again, it will kind of change you too, I think, if you do that. My current position, I'm at NWO. I'm a pain management specialist there. I've been serving pretty much the Findlay, Tiffin area, as well as now Upper Sandusky and surrounding areas since 2013. I do have multiple different kinds of procedures for mostly neck and back pain, but other painful conditions too. I'm dual board certified now in both anesthesia and as well as pain medicine. Again, bottom right is me actually doing a procedure. So if you guys have never really known what a pain management procedure is, essentially we're using an X-ray machine like this, LC shape, so we can see the spine and see where we're working at all times, so we can safely do these procedures. without much discomfort and hopefully help your pain quite a bit. That's pretty much what I had planned, just talking about kind of my journey from my training at Finley through flight surgery and then into the honor flight, and then now where I'm at now currently. I guess I would say questions at this point in time or anything else Julie would have.
Yeah, Q&A is up next. So if anyone has questions, please put them in the Q&A button down below on your screen. I will tell you we've got a few questions sent in ahead of time. So maybe you can answer some of these for us while the others on the call are typing in their questions. Loved hearing about your experience in Pensacola, and I was down there in 2019 before COVID hit, and was camping in Pensacola at the state park right there. And just out of the blue, one day, all the Blue Angels just flew over, and it was so amazing to see that happen. I had my own personal show, like you were talking about.
Yeah, it was definitely special. My wife, it took her about the first month we were living there to figure out why all the pictures on the walls were crooked, because with the Blue Angels flying over 2 to 3 times a week, it would just rattle the whole house enough that the pictures would move all the time.
Yeah, but so worth it, because it's just
definitely
such a neat thing. But one question that came in was, can you tell us your most dangerous day of your time over in Africa? I know you're working a lot with victims and emergency situations, but can you give us some details about the most dangerous time you can remember?
I would say probably the one I kind of touched on, that when we got a Sikorsky life-saving war, was probably the most dangerous in terms of that, because it was night landing. We took 2 helicopters out to the scene because we weren't sure if we'd be able to get in with both or not. We were landing at a high altitude, so it was about 5,000, 6,000 feet. So when you're landing in a helicopter at that kind of high of an altitude, you have to really be careful, because you can torque the engines, and essentially the engines can fail. So we had to dump a bunch of fuel, go up higher, dump a bunch of fuel just to be able to land safely. And we could only fit 1 aircraft in that zone. Once we landed, we realized there was a large concrete wall built all the way around the area. We couldn't see it. It's night. We had our night vision goggles on. We were trying to do the best we could. And so, they were probably within about 6 feet of hitting that. And we had to land on uneven ground. And I had some Air Force parachute rescuemen that also were with us. So those are the guys that are kind of like, if you will, the special forces of medics. They went out and basically gathered the victims and brought them back to the aircraft so we could treat them on the aircraft then. But again, it was definitely probably the most dangerous, just because the Ethiopians, it was midnight, almost 1 o'clock by the time we landed. They have a large helicopter that's very noisy landing in their backyard, and they don't know why. So they were scared, and rightfully so, but that was probably one. The only other time was when we were flying, we had left Kenya, and we were going to be coming back up on a large deck Navy ship. So my OIC at the time, who stands for officer in charge, he was always wanting me flying with him. He said, if I'm flying, I want my doc with me, because if I go down, I want my doctor with me. So I always got to fly with the guy in charge, which is kind of fun. But we were getting ready to come back to the ship, and they had the landing gear up. So they went to put it down, which rarely do we put the landing gear up anyways, but we had the front nose gear got stuck. So we're trying to land with only the 2 rear mounts, and there's 3. So we have to land on the ship while it's moving, we're moving, and keep the front wheel up while other guys came underneath their aircraft, and they pulled the wheel back down and then locked it out. So that was, again, probably the second most, because afterwards I thought it was amazing. I was like, wow. And they're like, how often that happen? And it's like, we would never do it. We practice it, but we practice it on the runway, never on a moving ship out in the middle of the ocean.
Right.
And we don't practice it with real people running underneath the aircraft while the rotors are going. So that was probably the second most. It's a kind of a toss up between those 2. They were pretty, again, scary, but I wasn't really so scared now until afterwards. And they told me, I was like, oh, okay. That was a little, and even still, I had great pilots in control. So it was handled very well.
Good. Now, you said that was the CH, did you say it was a 38?
CH-53. CH-53.
Okay.
53.
All right.
Yeah, we were the 53 squadron. They now have the new model out, which is the Kilo model. They skipped that many from the Echo to the K. So it went from E to K because there was that many failures in between. So the Kilo or K model is the one that's out now, but very few have them. It's much nicer. It's actually air-conditioned cabins and everything else up front for the pilots. So
all the
they're like
fancy
spoiled
stuff.
now. Yeah.
Of course they are.
Yeah.
But is the CH-53 designed so that if that front landing gear you cannot get that out? Is it reinforced so that you can actually make a hard
Yes.
landing and still survive it?
So I asked them what would be our alternative. They said the alternative would have been we would have had to take back off, retract all the landing gear, and then they actually on the ship will bring out mattresses and other things to pad it some, and then you just land on the ship with no wheels, and then they try to hoist it up with the crane and fix the landing gear. So that would have been our alternative. So I was happy it worked out like it did.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like you got lucky. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Another question that came in is, when we think of military service, we think of the extreme amounts of camaraderie and teamwork among the members, and wanted to hear your experience with that. And then also tell us if you find that to be similar in I want to say the real world, the other world, the business and professional world.
I would say in the medical community, I certainly can see it. Okay. Yes. So that camaraderie does carry all the way through. I mean, the pilots and air crew that you're working with, the reason I wanted to show that other video, and sorry for that early on when I did that, but one of the pilots I was with, I mean, he's now in charge of one of the main things at the Pentagon, but anyways, he shared that earlier today just to kind of show what we do. I mean, these are young guys who are directing the pilots what to do, because the pilots can't see what's underneath them, and they're having to come over top of a Humvee while others are standing on top hooking up straps. So you have to have teamwork. You have to have a camaraderie, because if you don't have teamwork working all together, bad things can certainly happen. And I see the same thing in healthcare every day. The nurses and the physicians and how they work together. I mean, you got to be careful, you got to be safe, but you got to be very efficient at what you do and taking care of patients and having good outcomes is the ultimate goal. So I think there's a lot of similarities, certainly in the healthcare field.
Mm-hmm. Right. That reminds me of a communication strategy that was introduced, I believe, by a commercial airline pilot, CLR. And I think then it was adopted over into the medical community then as well. But it came out of many crashes where that communication and that teamwork wasn't happening. And so they put into practice this communication model so that they could open it up. And I understand it's in the medical community now as well. Is that right?
Yes, no, it is. One of the things I didn't touch on, I guess I should have, with the flight surgeon, the other major role, and thankfully it doesn't happen very often, I was only involved in one investigation, is if they have in the military, if an air crash, any kind of crash happens with an aircraft, it becomes a mishap. Okay, and the mishap is the term they use, but that could be something as simple as something was damaged and nothing else happened, or an injury. So there was one mishap that happened on base. They tried to take a flight surgeon from a different squadron, so it's in basically an unbiased viewpoint, somebody else who's just reviewing all of it, and you look for where the breakdowns occurred. Okay, and like you hear the Swiss cheese model so much, that's such an important thing to see when these things happen, when there's a breakdown, when there's a problem. Where did it occur? Was there a check that didn't go through? Again, that has been carried over to the healthcare field. Again, we hear that a lot in healthcare because, again, wrong medication administered, that can be some devastating outcomes, no different than a guy calling out the wrong distance and a pilot landing hard, which then could cause another problem. So,
right.
Yeah, it definitely carries over. But yeah, I was involved in one mishap. I mean, that one turned out to be, it was just, again, sometimes errors just happen too bad. It was nothing that was done specific in that, particular investigation that stood out. But we spent about 6 weeks. I mean, they don't take these things lightly. I mean, it's a long time. You meet, the mishap board meets, there's a senior officer, there's a medical officer, which I was on, and then various others who kind of review everything, go through it's almost like a court case, really. You bring in individuals and ask them what they had that day, drink wise, food wise. I mean, you want to know every detail to see if there's something that could have been involved that could have played a part.
Right. Well, that all builds to better safety. So yes, those processes are great to be done. We had a question from Stephen Baker, and Stephen asks, did you see any malnutrition in Africa while you were there?
So, I mean, I had very little exposure except for the one picture I showed you in Ethiopia there. We did stay primarily on base. We would go out in town only a little bit, but in Ethiopia, certainly that small village, I mean, you did see some of that for sure. I mean, again, it's just hard for them to get the food sources. They don't have what we have available. So yeah, I think in that picture, you can see some of the children that are there. And again, to them, they don't know any different, but I would consider it in our world, yeah, to be a malnourished child. So
Right.
it's unfortunate to see, but.
And so while you were in Africa during your time, did your team have enough time to do any other kind of work in the community with either infrastructure or service of any other way, or were you just so busy that you couldn't?
We did a lot of training most of the time, preparing for all those other things. However, we did help out so most of the humanitarian stuff there was being done by the Navy Seabees. And if anybody's familiar with the Seabees, they're essentially the construction crew, if you will, of the Navy. I mean, they do everything. They had built a school before we were there. They were building the meat processing plant I had mentioned when we were there. So we would help take some supplies out to them and assist on that. And we also would help when we went downrange to Kenya, some of the stuff there, we had several senators fly into Mombasa in Kenya there, and they wanted to see this base because we had done something that nobody else had ever done. We essentially, within 6 weeks, built a brand new base that never existed in Kenya so that we could bring 3 of our aircraft down and perform these missions. So they wanted to see what we had put together. So we flew down, we would fly them up so they could see the area, so they could see just, again, what we do and how things young guys and gals can do in the military for sure. So I think that was helpful too, just so they could see that aspect. But yeah, we did only a little bit with the humanitarian part ourselves. It was more support of the others who were doing it.
Okay,
so
good.
Before we arrived, the previous squadron, which was still 53 squadron, there's 2 different squadrons that take turns. There had been some bad flooding in Ethiopia. So they did a lot of supplies came to us, and by us, I mean the 53 squadron, and then they would fly in the supplies, they'd fly in the water, the food and such. And they did multiple missions of that whenever the flooding was so bad. So because there was areas where people couldn't get to any food and they were isolated. So yeah, we were certainly willing to do all that if need be, and they were called on it more than what we were, because there really wasn't any major problems when we were there.
Okay, good. We had another question regarding the honor flight program here in Findlay, and someone had asked how many guardians are required per veterans. Is there a certain ratio that is a must?
So they pretty much, it's one-on-one. So you have to have at least one per, because that's your responsibility, that veteran. He or she is your responsibility the whole day. And some of them are fine in terms of they can walk and all that. They don't need wheelchairs and that, but those that get tired by the end of the day, you still need to be able to be there. I mean, and so yeah, it is one-on-one. There was a few who were really a little bit harder on transport and stuff like that. We had one who was a double amputee, above the knee double amputee. So we all kind of chipped in. They had one person with him pushing him around a wheelchair while they were at the memorials, but getting him back on the bus, it becomes a team effort. There's 3 or 4 people that jump in and just try, because they had to do special lift and everything else to get him over. But he was an Air Force guy. He was so excited when he got to see his own memorial, because that was one of the newer ones that they built in the Air Force one. And he was just smiling ear to ear. And again, he was very, very happy. So,
oh, that is so
but
great.
yeah, essentially it's one-on-one is what it is, with the exception of some of those few circumstances, but it will be one-on-one. So.
Okay. All right. I had told you before, I'm interested in being a guardian. So do you have to have medical experience to do that, or?
No, not at all. No, they'll do all the training with you and everything, what you're expected of it. And they have some, like Larry was with me, and Larry's been on 6 honor flights. I mean, he's kind of a pro at it. I mean, he really is. He knows the next stops, what's going, how to help out. They have some that are just fantastic with wheelchairs. I've never seen 50 plus wheelchairs get out from underneath the bus and set up and ready to go faster than what these guys do. It's amazing. And again, it's a really nice experience. I do recommend it if anybody's interested. Again, I think it's really, really helpful, but yeah, no medical experience necessary. They usually try to have 1 or 2 physicians if possible. That we just have to have 2 that year. I know Dr. Heck's done it twice himself. He can't wait to do it again too. So yeah.
Yeah, good. Well, that is it for questions, I believe, Dr. Bahn. And so I'll double check. Yeah, no, that's it. I think we've covered all of them. So I want to thank you for being with us today. And what we're going to do next is we have an opportunity to give away a door prize. And so today we'll be giving away a gift card for George House to the lucky winner. And what we've done for all the winners on the screen is, or that are here on the call with us, is we've taken the names of everyone who's registered for the day, which is the way we have to pull the names. So there may be extra names on here. And of course, we ask that people be present to win. So we will try to hit somebody that's actually on this call and not registered for the next one instead. But we're gonna spin the wheel and let's see if we can get ourselves a winner. So this is our wheel of names and we've got all names loaded. So let's see what we can do today. Choose a winner. Ah, it looks like Nancy Pownell. And so Nancy, if you are here, would you please put your name in the chat and let us know that you're here? Because we do need to have those folks present to win. So do we have Nancy? Let's give Nancy another minute. Type in the chat, Nancy, to let us know you're here. I don't see Nancy typing in, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna spin it one more time. Oh, she said she's here. I see that she said she's here. Never mind, we don't need to spin it one more time. Nancy, you will be receiving the gift card and we will send that from our office. And I will make sure that that happens. I thank everybody for being with us today. Any unanswered questions that are left over that have come in to the chat, we will make sure that we follow up with those through email. Want to also give you a couple announcements about what's coming up on Lifelong Learning next. Next session today is at 12:30. Use that separate link. Don't forget, we're going to talk to history experts, Ron Ammons and Rob Tong. And we're also going to hear from University of Findlay's Dr. Nicole Schroeder about the relationship between wars and pandemics. Next week on the 13th, we've got two great sessions. We've got Dr. Allison Kiefner-Burmeister, who will bring us fascinating presentation on how the media influences our children. So all of us know youngsters who are impacted by media influences, whether it's our neighbors or our family members or our friends. So you don't want to miss this one. Dr. Allison will be giving us tips on how we can help the littlest ones in our lives combat these influences and live a healthier lifestyle. Next week, also then at 12:30, we're featuring a session that every person everywhere should hear. We're bringing in two attorneys, Matthew Black, the Principal Chief Strategy Officer from Trust Company Family Offices, and Robert Shuck from Shuck Law Office. And along with my colleague, Ken McIntyre, they'll be telling you the 8 essential documents that you need to get your state in order. So everyone can use that. They'll be taking questions. So bring your list of questions with you. Invite your friends and neighbors and family. Thank you to all of you for joining us today. For all of you who have previously supported the University of Findlay, we thank you. If you have enjoyed our event today and would like to make a gift, please visit give.findlay.edu. At this time, we will sign off and we will say goodbye and hope to see you again at 12:30. Thank you again, Dr. Bahn and Jenna, and everybody take care.
Hey, Jenna, if you need anything, just let me know, okay?
Will do. Thank you so much.
Hey, you're welcome. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. All right, Julia, are we good?
I think we are good. Just about everybody has signed off. So thank you again. I appreciate you being here. We'll be in touch soon throughout the summer about the awards ceremony. And again, thank you for everything.
All right, you're welcome. Have a good rest of the day.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.